And I very cleverly, I would say, disguised my apprehension. I phoned these paragliding schools and pretended to just want to be an upcoming pilot. And so only later on in the conversation I popped a specific question as to how safe is this, and then I started quoting some of the statistics that I shared in my last video. And it's interesting that I got very similar responses, particularly regarding the decision making from most of them. The old guard seemed to have all explained to me that decision making is paramount, and good decision making is paramount. So I asked very specific questions. One, why is it that in the statistics that I read, advanced pilots are very often the pilots that are perishing? Why is it not just the rookies, the guys that are starting up? Why is it that you see that pilots that have been doing this for a very, very long time are also dying? And the answer was really well summarized in one of the interviews, where the instructor told me, soon after you qualify as a pilot, your path will split into a fork where you're either going to go down the thrill-seeking path, where you will continually learn new skills to eventually end up in acrobatics. They call it sports flying. You'll buy similar equipment that will enable you to do that. That equipment is less forgiving. It is safe if you have skills. If you don't have skills, it's not so safe, and it is for everybody less forgiving. So if you don't have the skills, it certainly is not going to forgive you, and then you're going to get punished for whatever mistake you make. That's true for a great many sports, motorsports not excluded. If you think about an F1 car as opposed to a very stable pickup truck or a bakkie. So the one guy then also framed it quite nicely to me. He said, as long as you stay within your envelope, there's not much that can go wrong. And what does it mean to stay within your envelope? Well, presumably that means not venturing into terrain, and with terrain I mean weather conditions that you're not familiar with, that you're not skilled enough for, that you weren't trained for, and that your equipment cannot handle. So if you stay within the envelope of what you're capable of doing, given the equipment that you're using and given the amount of experience, sorry I failed to mention experience, then you always leave yourself a safety barrier, and your safety barrier is forever gonna get you out of trouble. That's the margin of error that you would be allowed. If you leave no margin of error, then the slightest error that you make, you're going to be in trouble. And so, having listened to and spoken to quite a lot of them, I made up my mind that I do think I want to give this a chance and pursue this as an opportunity. And it just so happens that the last instructor that I spoke to said to me, man, listen, come around. If the conditions are right, I'll put you in a harness, and I'll put a glider in your hand, and I'll put you onto some ground handling. It's dead safe, nothing can go wrong, but at least you will get a feeling of what it is all about. And if the conditions aren't great, then I'll put you in a simulator. I still don't know what it looks like, but he says he has such a thing. And so I suppose then the next step in my journey was to go to Barry Peterson from birdmen.co.za, and Barry stuck me into a harness, taught me a few of the basic things, and set me off to launch my first paraglide, which was thrilling on the one hand, but also on the other hand frustrating, simply because you're so new and you know so little, and there's such a big hill to climb in front of you. One thing that Barry very quickly picked up, my particular personality, if you haven't picked it up, would be tending to overthink things rather than experience and feel it. And so very soon, within the first 2 attempts of doing a launch and then walking down a specific straight with it just overhead and trying to control it, I was looking up at the glider and trying to control the glider from whatever inputs he was telling me about. And then by the 3rd time he said to me, no, don't look at the glider, feel it. Let the harness tell you, let the harness give you feedback about what the glider is doing, and let the harness give you the necessary feel, because that's what you'll have to develop in the air. You can't be looking at your glider all the time in the air. You have to develop a feel. Now that resonates with me at a number of levels. About 15 odd years ago, I did an advanced driving course, which really changed the safety for me in my vehicle, and at the same time has turned me into a much better driver. And essentially the first thing this guy did was to shift. I'm 6'2" or 188. He shifted me forward toward my steering wheel and placed my driver's seat upright, straight up, so that my whole back is in touch with it. And what he was saying is, you need to allow the vehicle to talk to you. You need to allow the vehicle to give you feedback. You must feel the vehicle through the nerve endings in your back. You cannot just try and feel this vehicle with the 2 buns of your bum on the seat and perhaps your hands. That's not sufficient feedback. And I've been doing that ever since, and I've always had very good feel about a vehicle. I can sometimes feel a wheel going flat at the back, and there's better traction because I got new tires and stuff like that, and it's feel that I didn't have, but I developed over time. So when Barry said to me, I need you to develop feel for the paraglider, it resonated with me, and I immediately went into that mode. So you might see in some of the pictures that the remainder of my 2-hour stint with him, my head was down. I was doing ballerina type dances to try and center myself under the glider. It was quite taxing, and I was still doing the wrong things. Everything isn't intuitive. A lot of it is counterintuitive, but that's what it's all about. It's about learning and developing. And so having left Barry on that day, I went about jumping on YouTube and watching more and more videos, but very specifically and very focused videos about skill, videos about technique, videos about ground handling. And I think that's where I want to conclude today's episode. If there's one thing that I hear again and again and again from experienced pilot is, the better your ground handling, the better a pilot you'll be, for a number of reasons. One, launching is the most dangerous bit. So if you want to talk about safety, get your ground handling right, which means your launches will be good. You're not going to get in trouble at launch. Secondly, if you are going to handle your glider very well on the ground, you'll learn to anticipate and react instinctively to its movements by feeling, so that when it does it to you in the air, you'll do that by feeling. Once again, it resonates with me. I did a fair amount of adventure biking and a good lot of training up to an advanced level. And it's interesting that the best adventure motorcycle, 1200 odd cc motorcycles, the best adventure motorcyclists are the best at the slowest speeds, crawl speed. They are the best at controlling their weight, their balance. They know what the bike does and doesn't do. They know exactly how to keep it upright and how to not panic or don't do silly things at the slowest most possible speeds. And there are many competitions that asks of you to ride very tight corners through cones and do all sorts of silly things at very slow speeds. Those skills translate in the real life when you're on the bike doing a fast track that you have to shift something and get your bike to respond to you. So again, the lessons that I get on the internet resonates with me because it makes sense in terms of what I have experienced. And so that's where I'm at with my journey. At the end of episode 3, sorry about that, 2 weeks in, I've had a bit of a busy week, so I haven't been able to get back to Barry. I want to go back, do more ground handling. Barry promised me to give me an older or lend me an older glider that I can come here closer to home and spend hours ground handling. I suspect a few of the following videos will just be boring. Ground handling, ground handling, ground handling. And yet, I hope there's learning, and as I get the learning, I'll share it with you. If you're starting to like this, and there's one person that perhaps you want to share this with who's also on this journey or considering it, why don't you subscribe, hit the bell to make sure that you're notified when the next video arrives, and share the video with your friend. Until next time, happy flying.